Hi guys, welcome to the final video of the Nanotech website tutorial, and in this video we're just going to be wrapping everything off and creating this footer section here and also styling it. So it's got these nice little hover effects over these list items which gives it a more dynamic look, and the social links that you see here which are icons also have this nice little transitional hover effect. And then to finish everything off we're just going to make this all responsive. So if I grab the browser and I start shrinking this down to smaller screen sizes, you see everything stacks on top of each other and it all looks pretty good. So let's start with that now. So I'm just going to bring this back. Now the footer section here has the same utilities class as the flex container for the team section and the market section. So all we really need to do is just grab the team section here and then just paste it underneath the contact us section. And I'm just going to tab it backwards a little bit. So we don't need this team or this H1 here, and all I need to do is just change a few things up here. So this is for the footer and this is for the ID of footer, of course, and it's going to have the background color of this primary color instead of the BG secondary utilities class. So let's just go inside the project here and we can see it's got that BG secondary, which is this white color, but we don't want that. We want the BG primary, and it should make it a nice blue. So the next thing I want to do is just add an inline style, so when this page reloads it stays on the footer instead of having to scroll down all the time. So I'm just going to give this a height of, let's say, 500 pixels, and we're going to get rid of this but just for the purpose of this section. So what I want to do next is just get rid of these images or all this content, and then inside the flex container what I'll also do is create a footer container. So footer container class, and then instead of flex items team, we're going to make footer items. So Control D for the multi-selector. So we select all three of these, and then we just put in here footer items. And then the next thing we want to do is go inside each of these. So each of them is going to have a H4 or a heading, which is going to say company for the first one, and you guys can put anything you like here for your websites to suit you guys, but this is just for my example and the Nanotech website example. And then underneath this we've got an LI and a list item and then an anchor tag inside, and we're just going to put hash because this isn't going anywhere. So we're going to have the first one is going to say overview, and then I'm going to duplicate this 3 more times, and then the second one is going to be management. And then we're also going to have one for patents for Nanotech, and then we're going to have careers. So if you guys are looking for a job for this fictional company. Now I'm going to fast forward this section because I'm pretty much just going to be repeating myself. So now for the socials, this is going to be styled a little bit differently. It's still going to be a flex item, but instead of this URL with the list items, we're going to have a div in the class of social links, and then inside here is just going to be anchor tags, and then this isn't going to go anywhere, so you just put hash, and then inside these anchor tags we're going to have icons. So it's going to be those Facebook icons, a Twitter icon, the Instagram and a LinkedIn icon. So it's going to have a class of FAB and then a class again of FA-Facebook -F, hit tab, and then it should appear there. So you see that nice little icon there. So we're just going to duplicate this 3 more times, and instead of Facebook for the second one we got Twitter, and then for this one we have Instagram, and then the final one is for LinkedIn, so linked, and then -in. So it should go to the LinkedIn icon. Now that should be it for the markup. So now all we need to do is just style it. So I'm going to go underneath the placeholder here, and the first thing I'm going to do is just grab the footer ID and make sure the width is 100% of the browser. And then the next thing I want to do is just give the styling to the H4s because we can't see them. So I'm going to grab those. So it's footer items H4, and the first thing I want to do is just make these visible, so I'm going to give them a color of white. There you go. And then the next thing I want to do is make these a lot bigger, so font size is going to be about 3.5 rem. And then let's make the letter spacing, let's make the letter space about 3.3 rem. This will just pretty much put a bit of space between the letters, which I think looks a little bit clearer and a little bit nicer in my opinion. And then we want the text of this to align to the left, because we don't want it to align to the center. And then just give a bit of margin bottom between the H4 and the list items. So give them a 1 rem, so that's about 10 pixels. And then what I want to do is just position this relative. The reason I'm doing that is because if we go to the original website, you see we've got this nice little underline underneath the H4s, which separates the H4 and the list items. So we're going to be doing that with an after pseudo element. So we're going to create that now. So I'm just going to grab this section here. So copy that underneath here, and then grab the after pseudo element. Then we write the content property. Now we don't put any content in here, but to initialize a after pseudo element, we need to insert this property first. And then we're going to position this absolute, so it's positioned absolute inside this H4, so we can position it pretty much anywhere around the H4s. So the next thing, I want it on the left to be 0, so it's right up against the edge. And then let's put this on top, so 6 rem from the top, so it's about 60 pixels. And then the last thing we want to do is just make this visible, so we're going to say background, and then say color. Color of white, and then give us a bit of height, and let's say 0.2 rem. And the last thing I want to do is just give it some width, so let's say 5 rem, and that should appear a nice little underline, so you can see that underneath the H4s or the headings, so it looks pretty good. So the next thing I want to style is the list items, because these are all squashed up against each other and they're pretty small, so I want to grab those. So footer items UL LI, and I want these to be the text aligned to the left first, so they are aligned to the left, so it looks a lot better. And then let's give them some padding between them, so say 1 rem, so it's a bit of space between each of the list items. And then let's also give them a font size of 1.5 rem to make them a bit bigger. Looks pretty good. Now what I want to do is add that transition effect, so when we hover over these, they nudge to the left a little bit, which makes it look a bit more dynamic. So to do that, we need to grab the footer items UL LI, the anchor tags, and I'll set a transition in here, say all point. I want the transition to be 0.3 seconds long, and then ease. And then this is the effect is gonna take effect on hover. So I'm gonna grab that again and then insert the hover selector or pseudo class, and then just put a bit of padding left of 0.8 rem. So when we hover over these now, it should have that nice little effect, which I think looks really good in my opinion. So the next thing I want to do is just style the icons here. So I'm going to grab the class of footer items and then social links, and then also grab the anchor tags, and then I want to add a bit of margin, so 1 rem, and then let's give them a background color of white. And at the moment it's not working, so why is this not working? Alright, so if I go to the markup and the social, also I've spelt the class wrong or written a different class, so I want this to be social links. So if something doesn't ever work sometimes, guys, always come and check your markup, because it might just be a little spelling error. So I just want to put social links here, and that should now transform them, so there you can see they have that styling now. So we can carry on with this. So border radius of about 1 rem, so give them a rounded border, and then or a background, and then width of these to be about 3 rem, and then let's give the color of these, let's make them that primary color, and then just give them a bit of padding. So let's say about 0.3 rem, and then let's give them that transition. The transition, let's say all 0.3 seconds long, ease. And what we also want to do is just make the font size of these a bit bigger. So let's say font size of about 2.5 rem. So they're nice and big. So the next thing I want to do is give them that hover effect. So when we hover over these, they transition from a white background to a blue background, and the icons become white. So I'm just going to grab this section here, and then we're going to say hover, and then just give them a background color of that primary color, and then give them a color of white. So when we hover over these, you see it gets that nice little transition, which looks pretty good. But that'll be it for the styling, and as you can see, we've still got a bit of work to do because we need this scroll bar over here just to see the rest of the content. And you may also notice that the items don't actually line up the same vertically. That's because they're only taking up the width they need. So that's why these two are the same length, because they have the same amount of content, and this has a little less content. That's why it's dipped a little more, and the same with the socials. So to fix this, we're just going to go above the ID, or underneath, sorry, the ID of footer, and we're going to grab that footer container class that we created. So footer container, and we're going to set the display value here to flex. Now to affect these items vertically, so the cross axes, we need the align items property, and then what we want to do is just set the value to stretch. And now you can see the items line up evenly, and they take up all the vertical space, which looks a lot better. And another thing we need to do, so we can see the items without the scroll bar, is another property called flex wrap. And if we set this to wrap, by default it's no wrap. You'll see now when the screen gets smaller, they'll stack on top of each other. Now the only reason this is blue at the moment is because we've got a fixed width of 500 pixels, hence why it's overflowing. But if we grab the browser and we get even smaller, you'll see they'll just keep stacking on top of each other and keep stacking, and it looks pretty good. So it's quite a so the flex wrap property is quite a responsive property. So that sorts out that issue. But you can see here that the social section isn't exactly the same as this section here, and that's because this is only taking up the width it needs. So for this to take up the whole of the remaining space, we need to go inside the utilities class of flex items, and we'll use a property called flex, which affects the growth and the width of our flex items, and we'll set this to 1. And what this will do, well, now this social section, it will take up all the available space within this section here. And the last thing we need to do here is just apply a Flexbox to these icons here. So I'm going to go back inside the style sheet, and I'm going to go above the social links, and then so grab the social links class, and then set the display value of these to flex. And then what I want to do is just justify content, and let's give them some space between. And you can see now they spread across the whole width, which looks pretty good. And what I want to do from here now is just get rid of this inline style. And as you can see, we've created our footer now. And if we go over to the original website, you can see this looks exactly the same as the original website. So it looks pretty good, and it's got that nice little hover effect on each of the items. So the last thing we want to do, guys, is just make this all responsive. So if I grab this to make it a smaller screen size, you can see that when we get to the smaller screen size, we need the scroll bar again to see the header, and a lot of the items and a lot of the sections overflow, and you can see it just doesn't look really good. So what I'm going to do is just bring this back. So to do that, we're going to be using media queries. So if you guys are interested in learning about media queries, I do have a 5-Minute Fridays episode on media queries, which goes a little bit more in depth about these. So to create a media query, you first put @media, and then what I want to do is just set a max width of, let's say 900 pixels, and you guys can choose this when you want, but this is a breakpoint. So when we're inside the width of 900 pixels, the rules that we're about to apply now will take effect. So the first thing I want to do is just make sure that the header looks a lot neater. So it's got the ID of main header is where we've applied the flex container or the Flexbox styling. So main header, and then what I want to do is just give this a flex direction of column. So we grab the browser now, and if we get below 900 pixels or 900 pixels and under, this new style that we've just applied will take effect. So it should stack on top of each other. So as you can see there, the header now looks a lot better on smaller screen sizes. So the next thing we want to do is just style this section here, because it doesn't really look too great. And to be honest, we don't really need a media query here. All we need to really do is go where the header section is, and I'm gonna grab the welcome section content, and what we want to do is just make sure the text align is to the center, and that places all the items in the middle. So that just fixes that, so we don't really need a media query for that section. Now for the market section, this rule will apply to the market section and the team section. If we go back down to the media query, this has got a class of flex container. Let's just double check with that one. Yeah, so flex container, and then all we need to do for this one is just set the flex direction to a column. And this now, and as you can see now, the team section is much more responsive, as well as the market section, and the same rule should apply to the footer section, and that still looks pretty good. Now we just need to apply the rules to the contact us section and the about us section, and that one has a class of row, so we just set the flex direction to column, and now these guys should stack on top of each other, and this looks a lot better now. So the contact us section and the about us section all looks pretty good. Now the last thing we want to do is just get rid of that clip path cut for each of the images. So the first image here in the about us section and the contact us section. So what I'm going to do is just go inside this section here, and the first one has a class of clip path 1, so we'll go up to that section there. So we grab the property of clip path and the polygon, and then so the first section here, or the first parameter, is the top left, so we want that to stay the same, so 0% from the left and 0% from the top. And then for the top right, we want it to be 100% from the left, and then 0% from the top. And then the third parameter, where the cut actually is, we want this now, instead of 90% from the left, we want it 100% from the left, so we see the whole image, and then 100% from the top. And then the last parameter, which is the bottom left over here, we want this also to be the same, so 0% from the left and then 100% from the top, and that should get rid of the cut. So it looks pretty good. Now the last one is just the clip path 2, so I'm just going to duplicate that and then give it some different styling here. So for this example, you can see that the first parameter is where the cut is. So instead of 10% from the left, we just want 0% from the left and 0% from the top. And then the top right section here, we want that to be 100% from the left and 0% from the top. And then for the bottom right here, we want that to be 100% from the left and then 100% from the top. And then the last parameter, which is the bottom left over here, is 0% from the left and then 100% from the top. And then just close that off with the brackets. And then if we go back to that image, you can see we now see the whole image. And if we make this bigger, so back to that original position, you can see now the cut reappears, and the items now are a lot more flexible. They go back to their original position. We still got that hover effect. All looks pretty good. And if we grab the browser again just to demonstrate, you can see now once we get to a certain screen size, it gets a lot smaller. The items stack on top of each other in each section, and it's a lot more responsive. And just quickly guys, a nice little tip when you come towards the end of your project, it's good just to go over this again, just to see for any sections for the dry principle. So for example, in the style sheet here, if we scroll up each section, I just noticed when I completed this, was that when I apply a width of 100% in each of the sections, so you've got for the ID of markets, you've got it for the about section. So what we could do essentially here is just use a utility class and then just apply it in the index.html sections. So what I'm going to do is just go inside the utilities here, and then I'm just gonna go, let's go underneath the clip path, and I'm gonna create a comment here saying full width browser, and then I'm just going to create a class called full width browser, and we're just going to say for the width of this we want it to be 100%, and then all we need to do is just apply this class inside each of these sections here. So for each of the sections, just go inside here and apply this class. So full width browser for that section, and then for the contact us section, apply it in here. And then do the same thing for the team section, as well as the about us section, and then finally the market section. So that's just a little tip when you come towards the end of your project. So just go over everything again just to make sure that you aren't repeating yourself throughout your project. But that'll be it for this tutorial, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I really enjoyed making it. I hope you guys learned a lot throughout this tutorial. If you guys have any questions, please leave them down below, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.